This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to The Guardian Football Weekly. Europa League glory for Tottenham Hotspur. Ange said he wasn't boasting, just stating facts about always winning in his second season, and he still can. Spurs' first trophy in 17 years, their first European one in 41. Are you not entertained? So he said after the Carabao Cup win over Manchester United this season. Well, not really. It was so categorically and unequivocally anti-Ange ball. A terrible game. Sit in, get the ball in the box, score the decisive goal, and then just soak up the pressure. Conte and Jose would be proud. Champions League football then for Spurs, and a huge moment for Postecoglou, who didn't mic drop. We wait to see if he's there next season. Then again, it was against Manchester United, who didn't really look like scoring until Vicario dropped one and Van der Ven tested his hamstring like never before, and then Vicario pushed a Luke Shaw header wide late on. Also today, we'll look ahead to the Premier League weekend and the playoff finals, answer your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Barry Glendenning, welcome.
Hi, Max.
Representing Spurs, as well as me, Lars Sivertsen. Hello.
Hello, Max.
Congratulations. And commiserations, John Brewin.
Hello.
Yeah, there we are. Spurs won. What a glum hello that was. Spurs won, Manchester United 0. Brennan Johnson's did he touch it goal in the 41st minute, settling the Europa League, their first trophy since 2008, first European one since 1984. Mo Salah tweeting, he did say he'd win in his second season. Congratulations. Andy saying, should Ange have also said he wins things in his third season rather than just the second one? And John says, can Barry update us on how many more games we have to sit through until the next good one? A bad game settled by a terrible goal. Before we get to the panel, I didn't dare ask Mark Langdon for a voice note before full time because I didn't want to jinx it. But I did after full time. And here is a croaky-voiced Mark Langdon just after the final whistle.
Hi, Max. It's 1 o'clock here in Bilbao, losing my voice. Incredible night to be inside the stadium to see Spurs lift the Europa League. We know it was a bad game. I don't care it was a bad game. When Johnson scored, the noise was astonishing, and we sung the Johnson again song for a good 10 minutes at half time, and I've just never heard a noise like it inside the stadium. It was just fantastic. What does it mean? I think, when I was speaking with my dad about whether we should come out here, we knew it was expensive. It was going to be a pain. We had to go to Malaga first, then into Bilbao. We paid a fortune to get home as well on Thursday. But he said to me, I don't know if I'm going to get to see us win another European trophy. So we've got to do it. So to be inside the stadium with him was fantastic. Really emotional moment to see Sonny lift the trophy. And yeah, I don't care about the Champions League. I do care about the Super Cup, though. We're going to win the Super Cup.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. And look, before we talk about the match itself, as we said, Barry, with Palace and Newcastle, it is about exactly what Mark said. Him and his dad saying, this might be the last time I get to see that. Me and my dad, 10,000 miles apart, but chatting to him afterwards was great, and the agony of the second half. And we had that moment, sort of for the third time this season, a team that don't win things, winning something.
Yes, and in fine style, it has to be said. I think Ange Postecoglou is very entitled now to give, a big flick the V's at quite a lot of journalists who I'd say have been taking the piss out of him for a while now. I would include myself in that, I guess. He has far more strident critics than me because I quite like him, but he did say he wins things in his second season, and he has won something in his second season. It wasn't pretty, but it's a massive victory for Spurs, whose fans, I think, can now legitimately argue that despite being likely to finish one place above the relegation zone, have had a more successful season than Arsenal. Because they've both qualified for next season's Champions League, but Spurs have won a European Cup. And that's nothing to be sniffed at, particularly for a team who famously doesn't win things. I think it's a massively damning indictment for Sir Jim Ratcliffe and what the Irish journalist Dion Fanning famously labelled his Politburo of bullshit, which is led by Dave Brailsford, who is just been stealing a living in various forms for years. He's an absolute spoofer. There's him, Barada, Wilcox, Vivell, all these high-performance, best-in-class bozos who are slowly being exposed for what I always knew they would be exposed for, absolute charlatans. But this is about Spurs, I suppose. It was not a particularly impressive victory, but it was a very, very important one. I reckon they should keep Ange on. I think he's shown enough that he is not as married to his Ange ball as he once was. He has won them a trophy, but will Daniel Levy trust him to spend the money that will need to be spent for them not to embarrass themselves in the Champions League next season? I don't know.
Yeah. It's interesting. He isn't, Lars, as married to Ange ball. I mean, he couldn't be less married to it in this game. Like the second half was sort of extraordinary, wasn't it? Where Spurs just didn't want the ball, didn't care, sat there. And, Manchester United, of course, they had a couple of chances. But it's sort of fascinating that Ange didn't do it. And I think Jack Pitbrook afterwards asked him, in a kind of roundabout way, this wasn't Ange ball. And he said, look, in cup competitions, it's different. I've always been different. And I don't know if that's a bit of revisionism from Ange, but it's so different to what he always says is plan B is just do plan A better.
Yeah, I was frankly hoping we were going to revel in the glory of winning a trophy a little bit before we
feel free, revel.
But it is slightly... I mean, that part of it, but that part of it makes me think, can we just not be a bit different in the league next season? Is that an option? Like, there was a quote after the game. He says he feels knockout football is different. The quote is, when you're in that situation, it comes down to good organization, having a real game plan and moments, and you can minimize moments by having a strong foundation. I was just thinking, mate, you can have a game plan in the league as well. Like, there's no rule against it. Like, it's entirely possible. But, like, before we get onto that, it's very easy to wet blanket this because you can say it's just the Europa League. You can say they haven't played anyone good, yada, yada, yada. But I do think it matters quite a lot in other ways. I think it matters. First of all, I love the voice note from Mark Langdon. I think that is the biggest reason it matters because it's an incredible day out for a lot of fans who've been through a lot of negativity in the last sort of 2 decades. And everyone who sort of paid for the very overpriced flights and the very overpriced accommodation and all this sort of stuff and getting to Bilbao. I'm really, really happy for all of them. And everyone who's endured everything you've had to endure being a Spurs fan recently, to have that day out is wonderful. And I also just think psychologically for the teams, it matters an awful lot because this sort of thing of getting a reputation for being chokers, if you want, for being a team that always fails when it really matters. That stuff kind of creeps into the walls, and it's hard not to have that for play. It must be hard not to have. I mean, I wouldn't know. I've never been in a final, but it must be hard not to have that at the back of your mind when you're playing these games. So actually getting that off your back, I think, is hugely significant. But it doesn't mean there aren't still questions about what's gone on this season and whether you want it to keep going on the next season. I think that's an entirely that's a slightly different thing.
Yeah, I mean, actually, you're so right about reveling. We did it with Palace, and I'm happy to revel. Like, I didn't really cry until Heung-min Son picked up the trophy from Sheffield, and because I hadn't seen a lot of Son, and his smile is just so infectious, and I was so worried that we'd see another sad Son, like we see Harry Kane looking sad all the time. I thought that was just a wonderful moment, and there was a moment a bit like after the Palace Cup final when they cut to the fans all in tears. One of the TNT Sport cameras was like just focused on the fans for the final whistle. And it had this old guy with like his Spurs shirt over his jumper, which is the right way to do it because it might get even a bit chilly on a European night. And then he was hugged by, I think, his son. And then it just panned across, and for a small moment, you just saw like the top of a bald man's head, like an old bald man, just sort of sobbing uncontrollably into his scarf. And then the camera kept on going. And it is sort of amazing what It's amazing, John. I know you're United, but like to see these three teams that have won these trophies and to see the Tottenham fans and what it meant to them last night it's sort of magical.
Yes, and this is the season where we've talked about lack of jeopardy. Oh, it's boring, and yet we've seen those 3 days of emotion for the Newcastle fans, for Palace fans, and for Tottenham fans. And listen, as Lars said, when you hear Mark's little excerpt there, it's absolutely beautiful, isn't it? And we've all, as fans and as a Manchester United fan, I've had those moments, shared with your best friends and your family or whatever. They're wonderful moments, and the stories of travelling to Bilbao via Plymouth, or Plymouth and a ferry.
Yeah,
and, Portsmouth, John. Portsmouth.
Well, you might have gone via Plymouth, judging by some of the stories you've heard. One of my I was away last weekend, and one of my friends, a United fan, unfortunately, flew from Berlin to Bilbao. Didn't have a hotel for Wednesday night. Is probably returning home to divorce proceedings after 2 weeks. Just on the lam. But yeah, those are great times if you get out there and you're there as a fan. It's very different if you're a journalist, and so you are. And that's the thing. As journalists, we forget those moments. We forget that football fandom. The thing that people, when we're sat in the stadium and we're typing away, and we're criticising managers or asking questions of managers, we forget that the people in front of us have paid for this experience, have paid money for experience, have paid with it with their own spare time, they pay for it with their own emotions, they paid with the fact that the missus might be not that happy that they've just spent $2,000 on a trip to Bilbao. It's all there. And if your team wins the game, it's even better. And I've seen United fans say, "Yeah, great trip, really enjoyed it." Pity about the football. Those big finals are great events if you get to attend them, especially if you win. And listen, I don't hold any particular feelings for or against Spurs. I've always quite enjoyed them. I remember, funny enough, think back of memories, and one of my first memories watching a football game live was the '84 European Cup final. At half time, they showed highlights of Spurs winning the UEFA Cup that night. So I grew up thinking, well, Spurs winning European trophies,
It happened.
It's been a long time.
It's
been a long time since then.
I had an amazing, speaking of people there, we go on Instagram, the Football Weekly handle says, any questions? And I just got a question. I think it's like 3:30 a.m. Spanish time going, I've got a question from the pod from Bert. Why are there no cabs in Bilbao? Just this image. Just no. Is that a light? Is the light on? Is it not on? Oh, it's full. Damn it. And actually, Barry, it is worth saying, defensively, I don't know if Ange looked at the midfield he had available of Basuma, Sarr and Bentancur, and he was missing Kulusevski and he was missing Maddison, just said, look, we're going to have to play this way. Because defensively, not just those three, but defensively, Spurs were pretty faultless in this game, I thought.
Yeah, there were. There was a couple of wobbles from Vicario, but otherwise they were excellent. Maybe it was to Ange's advantage that his hand was forced by the injuries. So we kind of knew what his midfield was going to be before the game started. That's the midfield he went with, because he didn't have many other options or any other options. And they played pretty well. You could say, we're going to talk about how badly Manchester United played. Spurs played pretty badly as well. They just happened to win the match. With a really scruffy, skanky goal.
I was going to say, this master defensive plan, it didn't have to be that masterful, did it? It was one side of the defence. It was they obviously. Ange's tactics being what they are, and we know for one night only he became Chris Wilder or whatever. So he obviously thought they're going to give the ball to Diallo quite a bit because Diallo's done quite some good things for United. And so every time Diallo turned, there was 4 Spurs defenders in his way. And it worked. And then there was no other person to carry the ball. So all good until they bring on Garnacho. Then at that point you're defending deep. And then it's, they defended wonderfully. Romero had a great game. Master of all the skies, all that type of thing. Richarlison Richarlison played like, when you watch a rugby international and it's like the back row forward whose job it is to sort of scoop the ball out and annoy the opposition and make them give away fouls and penalties. And that's what Richarlison does. That's what he does best. That's why he was always good in the Mersey derby.
Yeah.
because that is his fixture. The one way you're just needling and niggling and just getting at them. That's the best game he's ever played for Spurs. It may well be his last game for Spurs. But he wound Man United up. And that's how it's done. And in the final, Ange is right. It's not the same as playing a two-legged game. It's not the same as playing a league match. Just get it done. However you've got to get it done. And they did it. Fair enough.
And this is something, it's not a complete bolt from the blue, because they played a little bit like this in the second leg against Frankfurt in particular, and in the second leg against Bodø Glimt. They were really well prepared. They stopped, blocked off the right spaces and were aware of the danger men and all this sort of stuff. And I think Ange deserves credit for starting Richarlison, actually. I think there was a strong, largely sentimental, but a strong case for starting Son in this game, even though he's been out injured and he hasn't looked that effective after he's come back. But I think acknowledging that, particularly in a final, the sort of the energy and the annoyance factor of Richarlison is significant and makes him very useful. Like, Richarlison hasn't, you would say on balance, Richarlison hasn't really worked out as a signing for the transfer fee that was paid for him and what you're expecting a Brazilian international centre forward to do for you. But he is useful. He does certain useful things for the team, and I think the commitment he always shows and the physicality he brings is, in this game in particular, was very, very useful, and it was a good decision by Ange to start him.
Yeah, and worth mentioning Solanke, who was, tireless in this guy. I just don't think anyone run that much. Do you think, Barry, because so much was made of Ange saying, I win things in my second season, and they get knocked out of the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, and people are like, probably not, mate. Do you think it took the pressure off the players? It's clearly he has done it. So it's like, it now looks amazing. And there was every chance they wouldn't do it, if Van der Ven doesn't do that clearance or whatever. But I wonder, do you think in some way that gave the players belief, or it just took all the pressure off them to go out and play just marginally better than Manchester United?
Maybe. I think there was an awful lot of pressure on both sets of players, everyone involved in that game last night. Spurs handled it a little bit better, but the consequences of losing that match were always going to be massive. And now Manchester United have to deal with those consequences. But I suppose if you have a manager who keeps repeating this mantra, I always win something in my second season, and gradually it becomes apparent, well, we're not going to win this, and we're not going to win this, and we're certainly not going to win the title. So eventually there's only one thing left. Well, maybe it must be this. Let's go and win this. Maybe. I don't know.
It's worth saying we have a massive Australian audience, and his impact on Australian football just cannot be understated. A mate of mine, Nick Stoll, saying Ange Postecoglou is not just the first Australian coach to win a European trophy, the first coach not from Europe or Argentina to win a European trophy ever. In the world's most popular sport, we've never seen a journey as incredible as his. A kid from Melbourne, mate, he says. I don't know if it's the most incredible journey, Lars, but it's kind of up there for a guy that moved from Greece when he was 5. His parents had nothing, to end up playing for Puskás, go into coaching, to have success everywhere he has been, Australia, Japan, Scotland, and now this. And we talk about the importance of Crystal Palace's win for football, English football. Mate, I don't know if it's an overstatement, just for world football. It feels quite inspirational that this guy can win this trophy.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I actually think, I almost think the most incredible part of that journey is the most recent part. The fact that he won the Japanese league with Yokohama in 2019, which is not that long ago, really. And getting from the Japanese league to being in charge of one of the wealthier Premier League teams and winning a trophy with them is that's kind of the most improbable jump there, I think, the way modern football has gone. Spurs took a gamble on him in that regard, and the way that Celtic took a gamble on him. And I do think that could be a positive in the sense of clubs maybe thinking outside the box a little bit with some of their managerial appointments. It doesn't have to be the same guys from the same merry-go-round and the same sort of thing that it always is. You can hire a guy who has a slightly different CV to the candidates you usually look for. I guess the counter-argument to that is Tottenham's league form this season, but we'll get to that, I guess.
We should say, great moment for Heung-min Son. 10th season at Spurs, 454 games, 173 goals. His first trophy, he'd lost 3 finals with Spurs. There's a nice picture when he lost the Asian Cup to Australia of Ange comforting him, and now that they're together winning this. Brennan Johnson, who, remember, had to delete his social media earlier in the season to score the winner if he did get a touch. He's got 18 goals this season. The question then is, John, does he stay?
There was always this question, wasn't there? Why wouldn't he stay? He's entitled to stay. He's achieved something that no other Tottenham manager, apart from Juan de Ramos, has achieved in this century. Juan de Ramos didn't last that long after it, actually, thinking about it. There we go. Before this game, it felt like it was one of those, because essentially the press have this bloodlust for managers, this bloodlust of getting people sacked. In the papers today, you'll read a lot about how Amorim should go. I don't hold that view myself, but what you've got is this idea that Ange had to hold on. He had to win this game, but he would be sacked anyway. That now feels ridiculous that you would sack him after that. It would be the ultimate Daniel Levy manoeuvre. And I tell you what would happen is, after 10 games, the next manager comes in. Now, Lars, you name me a hip and happening Spanish manager that it could be that comes in. Say
Iraola. Would be top of the list, I think.
Iraola would be top of the list, though. I don't think that's going to happen because Iraola seems to be reasonably happy at Bournemouth.
At the point where we're going to make stands.
Yeah. So, okay, we are. I forget. We are in a hypothetical world here, of course.
Yeah, we are.
Iraola goes in, and Iraola has the run of form that he had at Bournemouth occasion, which is the team doesn't win very often and plays well. They either play at the top or they play the bottom. They can be inconsistent. Get rid of Iraola, leave it, you pest up, you rah. And we're back to the Tottenham Stadium, being Tottenham Stadium again. Everyone's whinging. Everyone's already forgotten that glorious night in Bilbao because you got rid of Ange. Ange the king. Ange the sainted guy that will never be forgotten. In fact, if Ange had anything about him, he'd just resign and say, right, that's it for me. I will be that godhead. Fancy putting him, get a statue of me there, me and Billy Nick, we're the guys. But no, that's not. They should keep him and see how he goes. Maybe Ange's learned a few lessons as well. Mm. That's the way we play, mate. That's gone out the window now. We know that he can do things differently. So give him a go. He's worth a go.
I completely agree with you, John. But if I could play devil's advocate, would keeping him not be a similar error to United keeping Ten Hag last season?
I don't think so, because Tottenham aren't Man United. And Tottenham don't win things. Like, Man United keep winning things. And so, like, I think it's totally different. I think if you win something with Tottenham, you should be afforded as much as you like, because it's every 2 decades now. It's not like, someone else turns up. That's what I think.
Ten Hag, having won that trophy, was entitled to have another go. There's nothing wrong with saying, all right, you have achieved that success. Let's, if there's no one else, which is actually what happened. I mean, the story it ends up is that United, Ten Hag was on holiday and 2 blokes from United knocked on the door and said, right, about extending that contract. He didn't know. Because, that's how Man United have run. Wow. And this is the thing. Daniel Levy will have an idea of whether he wants to keep Ange, and I would expect, and I hope, actually, otherwise football has gone even madder than I thought, that they give him a go. If it doesn't work out, see you later, Ange. We had a great night in Bilbao, didn't we? That was fantastic. Thank you very much, mate.
Speaking of statues, I think it was Jay Harris on The Athletic saying, I've consumed a lot of Tottenham content today, saying they should get a statue of Van der Ven. Don't know how you could, in that pose, I don't know how you set that, because he's in midair, maybe hang it from the ceiling, but God, it was some clearance.
I was always told that to do statues, sculpting, legs are the hardest bit. So you don't want legs flying around. Right? It's sort of... That's the
It's a tricky one, isn't it? It'll make the Ronaldo one look good, won't it?
When you see men on horses, that's difficult. That's always. They never get the legs right, do they?
Maybe the next time Van der Ven is injured, you can just kind of bring him into the studio where the artist is working and just kind of suspend him from the ceiling in a series of wires, and just have him floating there. and then the guy could just chip away, because that was incredible. And I also thought there was a great Kevin Dunzo clearance late on as well from the box, one of those times, because I thought, I was very certain this wasn't going to end well for Tottenham, and they went very deep a little early in the game. I thought when they brought on Danzo, I think it was 78th minute or something. And then you're thinking, it's 12 minutes, but at least 15, possibly closer to 20 minutes of just being camped out in your own box now with big Harry Maguire to come up and play striker. I was like, I think I know what's going to happen here. Like, I felt very strongly that we're going to have a Harry Maguire equaliser and extra time and penalties. But there were some absolutely heroic clearances at the back there. And going back to the Ange question, I think you need to have a conversation with him about, like, what have we learned from this season in terms of what we're doing in the league? Because yes, he's achieved something no Spurs manager has achieved in a long time, but the other thing he's achieved that no Spurs manager has achieved in a long time is finishing 17th. Like, if you're in charge of the team that has the 5th or 6th highest wage bill in the Premier League and you finish 17th, it's in your second season, so you've had 1 year to get your methods across, and then the second season, things should be working. But instead, you finish 17th, you've got 1 win in the last 11 in the league. Even if you have been prioritizing the Europa League, it's not even remotely acceptable. And you need to have a good debrief and a good chat. And they're like, oh, why did this happen? Have we learned anything? Are we going to play this differently if we try this again? I still don't, and this is me being a bit wet blankety, but in the Europa League, Spurs have beaten Karabakh, Ferencvaros, AZ, Hoffenheim, Elfsborg, AZ again, Frankfurt, Bodo Glimt, and now United. There's no teams in there that a team with Spurs' budget shouldn't beat, I guess, except for maybe Man United, who have also been terrible. So I don't know if you're trying to make a sort of sober, rational analysis of where Spurs are at after this year. I think the case for keeping Ange is a lot weaker. But clearly, it's the morning after the night before, and we're all feeling a little emotional about things.
Yeah, well, I'm here for the vibes. I'd like him to stay, for sure. Anyway, there was another team playing last night, and we'll do Manchester United. Well, playing is a verb, I guess. What is that? Present participle? Don't tell me what it is in the comments. We'll talk about Manchester United in part 2. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Tom says, is it okay to feel sorry for Manchester United? John, is that the biggest disappointment in a disappointing season? And on your birthday as well. Happy birthday.
I've had happy birthdays. Who won the Champions League one night on my birthday? So, listen, swings and roundabouts. You're a Manchester United fan. I had the good times. The bad times are getting longer and longer. Hey, that's just as time passes on, I suppose. Yeah, it's disappointing because I suppose a bit like last season, your eggs are all in one basket, and you hope that they can produce the performance. I think the most depressing thing is the performance itself, in that it was so... Listen, I did a United game against Fulham, and I wrote in this, everyone knows how Manchester United play, and they have not varied their time, their way they play since then. And Ange Postecoglou, a manager known for not having a tactical plan, had a tactical plan, and knew how to play against Manchester United. I thought the team selection was a little bit odd. I mean, presumably Garnacho was brought on against chasing tired legs. Didn't work up front with Mason Mount, who I think worked hard but didn't really get enough of the ball. Bruno didn't see enough of the ball. The problem was the ball always ended up with, who actually thought had quite a good game on the ball, was like Lenny Yoro. It's a problem when your centre-halves are having to cut through the opposition with searing passes because no one else is moving in midfield. Tottenham did a number on them. The goalkeeper, yet again, let them down with the goal. So they gave themselves very little margin for error by playing that game. And the thing is with Amorim is there's been all these vibes of him thinking, hey, did I choose the wrong club? And this idea that Big Sir Jim has chosen the wrong manager, because remember back when he didn't actually want to be the manager till the end of the season. And we had that interim period where he then beat Manchester City. Do you remember the night that Noel Gallagher did the co-commentary? Well, he did the co-commentary for the first half, and they absolutely smashed them. And everyone thought, wow, Man United have pulled it off here. But a couple of big wins. he had his mojo then, but I think the size of the task has rather swamped him. That's not to say he can't pull it back, but he is going to have to think about doing things a little bit differently if he's going to stay in the job for much longer. As I said, there will be a lot of reports out there about how he's going to have to go and, all this type of thing. I wouldn't support that. I think he's worth pushing on with, because if you're a Manchester United fan, you're now used to the team being rubbish. It's okay. We can deal with this for the moment. If we see signs of progress, unfortunately, those signs of progress were not in Bilbao, but give the guy a chance. Let's see what they can pull in a transfer window. I mean, the players that are linked with, who are they? Cunha?
Yeah.
Well, he can be brilliant one day and he can disappear another day. Seems absolutely ideal for Manchester United. Liam Delap, not dissimilar, can be brilliant, can sort of disappear. This is a problem that, because of Manchester United's status these days, they're fishing in shallow waters, aren't they? And we're going to have to see what happens. But hugely disappointing. But after a season that they've had, can you say that Manchester United, deserve a summer in silverware and celebrating and an open-top bus tour around Manchester? No, of course not, even if they'd won it.
I suppose, Barry, the criticism that I've seen laid at Amorim's door a lot is that he didn't really change anything in that game. Every substitution is like for like until really late on. And it did just end up with, get it in the box, get it to Harry.
Yeah, it did seem baffling that he didn't make any changes at half-time because things weren't working. Rasmus Højlund doesn't look good enough to be a Manchester United player. He's not alone there, but he has been noticeably poor this season. They have a goalkeeping issue. And the worry is now that they've got loads of players on quite long contracts and big wages who they'll struggle to get rid of. The players they can get rid of and make a big profit on are Garnacho and Kobbie Mainoo, who are two of their better players. I wonder if Bruno Fernandes might be getting sick of life at Old Trafford. He didn't play well last night, and he was playing very deep, and that wasn't working, and Amorim didn't do anything to change it. And when he eventually did bring Garnacho on, that caused Tottenham problems. But why did he wait so long? Was he not fit, or was it just poor in-game management? I don't know. But nobody connected with Manchester United in any way covered themselves in glory last night.
Yeah, Garnacho said, I played every round to help the team reach the final. Today I only got 20 minutes. I don't know. I will try and enjoy the summer and then see what happens.
See ya.
Interesting.
Bye.
See if he stays about.
I would also wonder, will the likes of Cunha and Liam Delap
100%
want to go to Manchester United now because they're not in Europe next season?
And actually, that's an important point, Lars, because players must look at the number of players that have gone to Manchester United and think, hang on, this doesn't seem like, it's now not the destination it was, and it's certainly not a good stepping stone in your career getting better. In fact, leaving Manchester United seems to be the best thing that any player can do.
No, but I mean, that is also why they're linked with Cunha and Liam Delap, right? Cunha, who, as entertaining as he is, he's kind of the talisman of a kind of okay-ish Wolves team, and Liam Delap just got relegated with Ipswich. Like, they're not going after the sort of biggest names in European football like they once were, A, because they can't afford them, and B, because they probably wouldn't go there. I don't think if you're playing for Wolves or Ipswich, you get an offer from United, you go, but they're not in Europe next year. Like, I don't think that's going to be an issue. But I think it's more a case of, do you trust the Politburo of bullshit to get these decisions right at this point is the thing that would worry me as a fan. And I think it's kind of fascinating. Do you know who's been doing well under the sort of Ineos umbrella this season? Nice have qualified for the Champions League. They finished 4th in Ligue 1. Nice, who famously are so bad, according to Sir Jim Ratcliffe, that he can't be arsed to watch them. I mean, he's been very public about this. He says the level of football that Nice play are not at a level that gets him excited. Now, by complete coincidence, I was watching highlights from the Liga weekend before this game, and Nice beat Brest 6-0 and scored some very nice goals. Now, I saw the highlights from that game, and then I watched this final. I went, I do wonder if he's looking for quality of football, Sir Jim Ratcliffe. I mean, maybe he needs to sack off United and not watch that, because that doesn't seem very, very good either. I'm very suspicious of these guys and their capacity to turn this ship around. They seem very confident in themselves, but it's kind of hard to see where that confidence stems from. And on Cunha, since we're talking about it, the former Will Unwind, our great friend Will Unwind, got some great quotes from Ian Birchnell, the former assistant manager of Wolves, who said about Cunha, he's a player who plays on instinct. He doesn't like to spend hours looking through opposition and tactical bits. He likes to feel the game and play on instincts, which obviously, when a lot of coaches are working on deep tactical work, he doesn't always slot into that.
Sounds ideal. Sounds absolutely.
So he seems to, I mean, really, this is like every single issue that you have with Bruno Fernandes being slightly too chaotic. It's like that, but even more of it. It's like, really? Is this what we're doing?
Get him in there. Get him in there.
I don't know. So I'm not feeling super optimistic about this project going forward, to be honest.
Yeah, finally on United, John. Do you have hope? I mean, is it, people say, look, a season without Europe is, you've got time on the training ground, etc.
I mean, Amorim has talked about how he's been unable to work with the team as he would like, and one day, hey, listen. The 3-4-3 formation can work. We saw that at Wembley just the other day. I saw it at Selhurst just on Tuesday night. It can work. It can look glorious.
Yeah.
Perhaps Bruno Fernandes can become Eberechi Eze. We shall see. One image I will take from Bilbao is the face on Big Sir Jim Ratcliffe. He didn't look happy. Now, I've seen that face before, and I think that was it was at the America's Cup. Team GB got smashed by the Kiwis. And him and Macclesfield-born Sir Ben Ainsley fell out, and the face on Jim then was quite similar. So we shall see, because ultimately, Dion's Politburo, we all know who makes the big decisions. It's just this group of blokes following him around, shining his shoes for him, really, isn't it? And so let's see what Big Jim thought of that, because he can't have been impressed, but he can't be impressed by his own decision-making. It's just whether he will admit that that's the problem.
Yeah. Mark Chapman on the radio described him when he looked at the lineup, Daniel Levy's, gleaming there, he said Jim Ratcliffe looked uncomfortable, which I thought was beautifully understated. Anyway, that'll do for part 2. Part 3, we'll look ahead to the last Premier League weekend of the season, the playoffs too. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So look, the Champions League places are really finely poised, actually. Liverpool, Arsenal are in there. Man City have 68 points from 37. Newcastle 66 from 37, as do Chelsea, as do Aston Villa. Forest 65 from 37. But Forest played Chelsea, Barry. So it is entirely in their hands. Villa go to Manchester United, who, as we've established, if you listen to the previous part, it's weird if you've jumped just to this bit, but, we're not that optimistic about what Manchester United will turn up in this game. Newcastle home to Everton looks very doable, and Man City go to Fulham. How do you see it, Barry?
Well, the big game, I suppose, is Forest-Chelsea. Forest have to win. I think they could win. And if they do win, they need Newcastle or Villa not to win. So that's not out of the question. So I'd give Forest a decent chance. And then Villa, a win is enough for them if Newcastle or Chelsea drop points. I can see Chelsea dropping points. I don't think Newcastle will drop points against Everton. I would be surprised. City need a point from their game against Fulham, unless Villa beat Manchester United by 17 goals. Would you rule that out? I wouldn't. Yeah, I think that's kind of it. It's finally point. I cannot see City. I can see City dropping points against Fulham, actually. Maybe. I think Newcastle are nailed on to beat Everton, and I think Villa are nailed on to beat Man United. Forest, Chelsea, that could go either way, couldn't it?
Yeah, so the thing is, John, if Newcastle and Villa win, which we expect, if Chelsea or Forest win, if City lose, they're not in the Champions League. And like Fulham, like you said, they did beat Liverpool. Like, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that happens. That would be the biggest story.
And remember, just at City, Fulham completely outplayed them. They absolutely roasted them, but didn't get the win.
Fulham are it's the most inconsistent team, I think, in the Premier League, because I've seen them destroy Liverpool. Actually, remember the Muniz absolutely smashing through Van Dijk to win that game, and then I saw them a couple of weeks. In fact, the day when I was there, part of the execs, with me scallops and champagne, I vaguely remember them playing very badly against Everton. I think, yeah, they did. Fulham are the X factor in this. I think one of the things is Chelsea at Forest. Now, Chelsea were at Newcastle the other week, did not like it.
They don't like it up them.
Enzo Maresca, I'm not sure if he's got it in a team, or that group of players, in that really odd way that they're constructed. Because the City ground is, I will say this, probably the most bear pit atmosphere in the Premier League. I think
it'll be amazing.
You've also got Big Vange waiting for you if something goes awry. He'll be making sure that his presence is noticed. Chelsea need to worry about this. Forest have nothing to lose. They're going to go for it. Are we going to see Nuno do a reverse Ange and just, that's the way we play, mate, and just go for it? We don't know, but it's good. That is going to be such a fun fixture for those of us that was consider ourselves neutral to watch. But Chelsea could get a bit of a chasing there. We'll have to see how the rest of it all falls down. Comes Newcastle, I would expect to win, as everyone says. Yeah, City need to worry. City dropping out of the Champions League would be an absolutely seismic shock, wouldn't it? That would be one of the biggest shocks, actually, if we talk in this era where being in the top 5 and money, Champions League money matters. That would be an enormous shock, such that I can't really see it happening. But watch out, Chelsea.
Yeah, I also just think, I completely agree with John. I actually think that just tactically, that's not a good matchup for Chelsea, because while they have gotten a little bit more, marginally more direct in the last couple of months, they're still a very ponderous passing team. Maresca really believes in this sort of slow build-up type of thing, all these sort of sideways passes. I think Nottingham Forest will love that in terms of playing against them, because Forest are great when they can just sit back and invite you on and then hit you on the counter. It's the games where they've had to try to dominate the game themselves when Forest have fallen down. That's when that's what they're not able to do. But watching sort of Enzo Maresca play endless sideways passes, the Forest are happy to do that. Just sit back and wait for them to hit them on the counter with Hudson-Odoi or something. I think that's a massive banana skin for Chelsea. I'm kind of surprised to see, looking at the betting odds for the top 5 finishes, the bookmakers reckon City and Newcastle are safe, but they reckon Chelsea are slightly favoured ahead of Aston Villa. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think Chelsea are much more likely to screw up against Forest than Villa are to drop points against United. And also, lastly on that, United, of course, they have other things going on. They have somewhere to be after this on Sunday, because next Wednesday, next Wednesday, the 28th, they're playing a friendly in Kuala Lumpur.
Oh so my God!
They've got after this wonderful trip to Bilbao and this last day game against Villa, which I'm sure they'll lose. They all have to get on a flight to Kuala Lumpur. There better be some amazing in-flight entertainment on that flight, because I think the vibes are going to be bad. I think overall the mood is not going to be amazing. I'm not sure exactly what film can be deployed to cure this, but just a terrible time.
This is an obscure reference, but there's a Nick Cave film made in like 1989 or so, when the band have all got clean of drugs, and they go on a tour of the States, and they're all bored out of their minds, driving across the US with nothing to occupy themselves. And I think that's going to be the vibe The road to here knows
Yeah.
when it's called, and I think that's where Manchester United are headed.
Which is the Man United player who brings out the guitar and says, "Come on, let's all sing Kumbaya, lads." Can you imagine? Battle for 8th, which the battle that Baz can't stop thinking about. So Brighton go to Spurs, who have their trophy parade on Friday. So let's hope a few Spurs players go full Jack Grealish on that parade, absolutely shit-faced, and then turn out on Sunday. Brighton 3 points clear of Brentford, so they just need a point at Spurs. Brentford go to Wolves 8th. Now, unlikely to get you a European spot, but it still might. We don't know yet. Leicester going for Russell Martin, apparently. Southampton accelerating plans to appoint Will Still as their head coach. He was getting linked to a lot of championship jobs about a year ago after doing a great job at Reims. Joined Lens last summer, only 32 years old. Producer Joel saying making it the first time a Premier League manager is younger than him, which is quite confronting. Yeah, deal with it, mate. To the playoffs then. How are you feeling, Barry?
I'm feeling very confident.
Wow.
I think Sunderland are going to beat Sheffield United. I'm going, thank God. I have my ticket. I managed to get off the hook for work. So thank you to various people for helping me out there. I just look at the two likely lineups, and I think Sunderland have a lot more quality, and I think if they can get a good performance out of Joe Bellingham, Enzo Lafie, Mayende, Isidore, I think they'll get the better of Sheffield United. It's going to be an interesting game because Regis Lebris, the Sunderland manager, is very much the anti-Chris Wilder. There could not be more different. And I just think he has something about him. So I do think Sunderland will win this. And then we can worry about what happens next season afterwards. And if they don't win, I won't mind. At Wilson Stag Do last Friday, there was quite a lot of lads from Sunderland there, obviously. And I was asking them, like, how are you feeling about the playoffs? And the feeling seems to be very much, if we win, great, take the money, see how we get on, and if we don't, they won't be that fussed. I suspect they'll probably be fussed like me at 3:00 on Saturday, but it won't be the end of the world if they don't go up.
I'm just worried your confidence has jinxed it. That's what I would say. But anyway, I wish you the best of luck. John, you're going to Charlton Leyton Orient, the League One playoff final.
Yeah, London derby. Should be an interest. I've been to the League One playoff twice before, and Swindon Millwall back in 2010. An absolute grind of a game. And I went to it a couple of years ago, Barnsley Sheffield Wednesday. An absolute grind of a game. I worry for the entertainment level that I'm going to see. But on the sideline, Nathan Jones, whose performances in the playoff semi were superb on the sideline. Richie Wellens doesn't mess about either in that respect, so some good fun. Difficult to know what to expect from this one. I will be siding with producer Joel, and hopefully that he has a good day out, because at Charlton, it felt like a time, and not long ago, they were an established Premier League club. It was such a, and the Valley is a great place to visit. And,
in the Dream Team years, I can remember vividly when Harchester are losing at half-time to Charlton, and I can't remember who's the manager going, "I told you, Clive Mendonca, danger man. Johnny Robinson, danger man." I don't know why. It's the only words from that I can remember.
The thing is that I suppose both these clubs have been through troubled times, haven't they?
Yeah.
Leyton Orient, and my memory of Leyton Orient's last playoff final, which was this one, was I think this was the game that Steve Evans did his famous celebration. Remember the Steve Evans large man charging down the sidelines? They're sort of like showing off.
Oh no, I do remember. Yeah.
Showing off his form.
Yeah, it would be amazing for Leyton Orient to get into the championship.
It would.
So good luck to them. Good luck to Wimbledon and Walsall, who are in the League Two final. We're going to do a Premier League pod on Monday and then an EFL pod on Tuesday to round up all of that. Rumours that Stevie G could be about to rejoin Rangers, fueled largely by speculation he's been seen near the banks of Loch Lomond, and by a man known to be his barber in Glasgow, posting a picture from inside the training ground. So that could be interesting.
The talk about Stevie G is that if he does come back to Rangers, Jordan Henderson will be his number 2.
That is interesting.
Well, those two have they were very close, weren't they? Stevie and the close confidants when they were together, and the baton was passed on from Stevie to Jordan, and you could see that, couldn't you? Henderson would be an interesting manager. And I say that mostly because of that Ajax press conference they gave. You probably saw it early this season.
Yeah.
Where he was very defensive. I mean, he's made for a Premier League. Come on.
Well, he wasn't so much defensive as outrightly confrontational.
Yes, yeah. Well, in the classic way of repeating back exactly what the person has said to them, louder and angrier. That's.
I think it wouldn't be a bad move, though. I think if you think about Celtic, have been quite good at getting, quite often in goal, but like a few older players who played a lot of Premier League football, and it's been good for them. I wonder if, Rangers do. Would he? I'm presuming he'd play as well, right? Be number 2, and
he's still young enough,
playing
isn't he?
central midfield. Yeah, I think so. He's still in the England squad, for goodness sake, isn't he?
I forgot about that.
I don't know if he's in the next one. Yeah, Mark says, the other day, Eberechi has a simple celebration and the need for new celebrations. Considering his very recent chess victory, he could do a thoughtful chin stroke followed by a chess move, calling out the chess notation. Then when Elise next scores, he can do likewise with a chess move response. For Bayern, and back and forth it goes. It could be the most public, drawn-out game of chess ever, he says. Almost very boring until 5 seasons from now, when they might near the end of the game. Thanks for everything, says Mark. And I had a message from Sai on Instagram. It's a lovely message just saying, hey, Max, Barry, and everyone else on the Football Weekly podcast. Not sure what I'm trying to achieve with this message, other than just wanting to say thank you. Last year I lost my dad suddenly, and the last year has been shit. One of the worst bits was travelling for work every week. I had an hour's drive to my office, and all I could ever think about was my dad. I'd have to wipe away tears after I parked up. It got to the point where I just thought, this is how life is now. If I wanted it to stop, I had to just not drive. A week or two ago, as I was getting to the office, I realised I hadn't thought about my dad's death the entire drive. I was too focused on Football Weekly. It was the one where Barry shared his opinion on going to the theatre, and I was crying this time with laughter. Every drive since has been a breeze. This was huge for me. It felt so nice not to be a wreck before going into work. Thanks so much for this distraction. Since then, driving hasn't been a problem. I love this pod, not just for helping me navigate my grief, but I find myself sometimes more excited to hear the opinions of the team than the game itself. All my love, Si. Thank you, Si. We send you our love.
I'm glad my hatred of the theatre was able to help someone overcome a difficult time in their life.
Your cultural heresy actually has worth, doesn't it? Anyway, I wonder what, you're obviously doing a half marathon next year. Maybe we should take you to a play as well. We could cover everything off.
No.
Okay, there we go. Anyway, look.
We could send him to... We get him to do improv on the...
Love to see Barry doing it. I mean, I would be terrible. I'd love to see
theatrical improv.
Barry's a stand-up. Barry's got it in his locker. He could be on Whose Line Is It Anyway? Ryan Stiles, Greg Proops, Josie Long, and Barry Glendenning with Richard Ranch at the piano. I'd watch it. Anyway, come on, you Spurs. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lars.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for having me.
Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Spurs fan Phil Maynard. We'll be back on Monday.
This is The Guardian.